The late 2000s into the early 2010s saw a huge turnout in the found footage genre. Many of these movies are very beloved and were turned into franchises, some of these franchises still ongoing today. There is one found footage movie that came out around this time, though, that I think is underrated and underappreciated. That would be 2012's The Bay, directed by Brian Levinson. I honestly had never heard of this movie, and I don't think I would have if it weren't for Meat Canyon. He mentioned this movie in a video with Wendigoon a couple years ago, talking about their favorite horror films, and I am so glad he shared this one. The Bay is directed by Brian Levinson, who made Good Morning Vietnam as well as Rain Man, two highly praised films, at least from older generations. And when he was first doing research for this film, it was actually for a documentary he was asked to make about concerns in the Chesapeake Bay. But when another news outlet ended up covering the story, he decided to use his research in the area to make a horror film to bring awareness to the issue. Also, while researching this film, I learned that Jason Blum of Blumhouse is a producer on this film, so I would like to think this kind of helped kickstart his career as well as Blumhouse as a production studio. The Bay is a very realistic feeling movie because it takes place in a small town, and the actors in the film isn't anybody of high notoriety, and I think it was actually a launching point for a couple of actors' careers, which is pretty cool. Overall, this movie is fantastic. It has some minor flaws, but I feel those don't really take away from the experience of the movie. The Bay has a lot of qualities going for it, and one of the things that I love the most about it, and I think sets it apart from other found footage movies, is it uses a multitude of different types of footage to convey all of the happenings of the situation. From a news reporter to cop car footage to a teenage girl FaceTiming her friend through all of this. Having all of these types of footage adds different perspectives and views, as well as a dynamic feel to the movie that helps it keep moving forward. I feel like a lot of found footage movies use only one type of recording, and it's usually like security cameras in a house or webcams, or it's with somebody with a handheld camcorder or something like that. And I feel like those movies can feel a bit stale and slow because there's not a lot of change in view. Like quite literally, you're kind of getting the same view throughout the whole film. In The Bay, though, because they use all sorts of stuff, like they also use a web page that has a like eco defender exposing the big chicken corporations and how the farms are just letting their runoff into the Chesapeake Bay. They also have these oceanographers who, before the horrific events are unfolding in the town, are actually doing research in the surrounding Chesapeake Bay area. And as they find concerns within the environment, they send that to the local government, and the local government never responds. I feel like that adds such a real horror of there is an issue at hand and no one's doing anything about it. And as symptoms of the infection start to afflict the town, the head doctor at the local hospital, Dr. Abrams, reaches out to the CDC for answers or clue-ins as to what's happening. At first, the CDC does not seem very concerned, but as the death count grows and more people are showing up to the hospital with symptoms, the CDC realizes the severity of the situation. And as they continue their research, they're actually able to find an answer. And when they confront the federal government agencies like Homeland Security on what's happening, those government agencies also kind of downplay what's happening and act like they're unaware, even though there's oceanographers with scientific as well as video evidence of these dangers lurking around the area. The lens that the movie is told from, I also quite enjoy. So, in the beginning of the film, they show real news coverage of environmental, I guess you could call them like disasters or anomalies taking place, and they have a text will pop up after this montage of footage saying that those are all real events and this is an event that wasn't covered by the media, to which we're introduced to kind of our, I would call her like our faux main character, Donna Thompson. The story is told from the perspective of her doing a Skype interview and reflecting on the footage that had been leaked from a website after all of the footage had been confiscated. I quite like the idea that it's a story about reflection because you can tell from her Skype interview that Donna was changed by these events. Because throughout the movie, we're with Donna. The story takes place, I believe, in 2009 from a couple years prior, and she's like a brand new news reporter slash journalist. And you can just see how like sweet and bright and excited she is to be there. She's covering the 4th of July celebration in Claridge, Maryland. She has memories there. To watch her go through these events, not only right as they're happening, but also in reflection, just shows you how this jaded her. And I believe it caused her to turn away from journalism after realizing that when trying to expose hard-hitting stories that the government does not want getting out, they will silence you. And one thing I find very admirable about her character is even after the FBI shuts down her blog posts as well as her video posts, she still continues to report on what is happening, even though she is risking her life in a lot of ways. Also, the doctor, Dr. Jack Abrams, I believe is his name, is also a very admirable character. He is, right from the beginning, very concerned for his patients and is very adamant about finding an answer as well as a cure as to what is happening to all of these poor people. And I'm really happy that they painted him to be such a good guy because as things grow more and more chaotic at the hospital and he kind of realizes that things aren't going to be resolved as quickly, he does not leave his post pretty much. Like at one point, the CDC tells him to leave with his staff, and I believe he responds with, "I already sent my staff home. I'm not going to leave my patients sick and dying." And I just think that's so cool. Like, these characters aren't necessarily like fleshed out or complex in any way, but because they have such respectable traits, it makes you like them and empathize with what they're going through. There's also some other minor characters that we spend some time with, like Stephanie and Alex, who are a young couple with their infant son Andrew heading to Claridge to celebrate the 4th of July with family, and they're sailing from a nearby area. Their perspective and story is so heartbreaking and sad. I really love the idea of them sailing into the port and they haven't been able to contact their family because I'm assuming the government shut down cell towers so they can't get in contact with anyone. As soon as they arrive at Claridge, they can already see the chaos and heartbreak that has taken place. What's also cool is Stephanie is played by, I believe it's Kristen Connolly, and she actually stars in The Cabin in the Woods from 2011, so that's pretty neat. We also have another character named Jessica, who is a young teenage girl. She is FaceTiming her friend throughout the whole film because she is all alone. Her parents went off to celebrate and didn't tell her. And from her perspective, we get a really good view of the hospital as things grow and grow in uncertainty and chaos. There's actually what I would deem my worst nightmare is shot from her perspective of a hospital waiting room just full of sick people in hysterics. Nurses and doctors aren't available because they're stretched so thin caring for other patients on top of not knowing what is happening. So I really like that Jessica gives us kind of a like innocent, naive perspective to what is happening in her story. It just makes me so sad. Like, she's just like a 13, 14-year-old girl. It is revealed early on that she is infected as well, and you kind of know what her outcome is going to be, sadly. Oh, that also reminds me, we do have some cop characters that we get to follow as they investigate people just pretty much dying in the streets. And at one point, they go to a home where we don't get any visuals, but they use the audio of the police officers' body cams, or it's like a 911 call or something like that. But that scene pretty much brings me to tears every time, because you can just hear the panic. You can hear the like bewilderment of the state of the people in the home. And it's just a very gruesome thing to listen to. Like, you really don't need the visuals for this scene. You kind of get a good idea of what is happening. I really like all of the characters. I feel like all of them, although surface level, are very likable. They feel just like normal people that you're watching go through this awful tragedy. And it makes you really sympathize and empathize with them as they, try to deal with, this mystery at hand. And that's one thing about this movie I really enjoy, is you as the viewer are most likely going to pick up and know what's going on as the characters are still solving the mystery, pretty much is how I would describe it. And it just leads to a lot of heartbreak and worry is the best way I would describe it. For example, when Stephanie and Alex are sailing to Claridge, Alex and Stephanie are kind of having like a lovey-dovey playful moment. Stephanie ends up pushing Alex into the water. And by this point, you already know that the water is infected with these carnivorous mutated sea louse. So his fate is kind of sealed at that point. But obviously he and Stephanie don't know that. So it's kind of this cool perspective where you know what's happening, but the characters don't. And it just adds that much more suspense and worry as to what's going to happen to them. The Bay has a very well-rounded out use of different types of horror, and I think that's really cool because that means pretty much anybody who watches this movie is going to be scared or disgusted at some point. And it's not like they heavily rely on any of them. Like, you might think that they focus on the isopods a lot for the horror, but they're not as prominent as you would think in the film. One thing I love is they use just small details. For example, there's a crab eating contest, and as things start to kind of break out, all of the contestants start to vomit, and I know I personally am grossed out by that. Shortly after that, we see a woman who is just wandering in someone's yard, screaming for help. She's just completely bloodied, and she vomits what looks to be gallons of blood. I just really love that they use these small moments to build up the atmosphere of fear and helplessness. I really think some movies get too focused on, or if it's like a slasher or creature feature, they kind of only have one element that they can work with. The Bay also uses medical fear, or what I would call medical fear, such as a waiting room just overflowing with sick people that unfortunately the nurses and the doctors can't help because they're already stretched thin, and then they also have no idea what is going on. And it's just one of those vulnerable, helpless moments that as a human being, you're just, it's kind of just this fear of something's wrong with me and nobody can help, nobody has answers. But probably my favorite use of horror in this whole film is the idea of this mayor downplaying the severity of what's taking place, even when he was being given information that pointed to a problem that would affect his town. Like, he just did not care. He just wanted 4th of July weekend to go well, get that sweet, sweet tourist money, have, everything go as planned. There's nothing to worry about. And at the end of the day, even when there's this huge breakout and there's hundreds of people going to the hospital and rumors going wild, he still tries to tell everyone things are okay. And that is so scary. The idea of some kind of authority or leader in your town or just in your country downplaying the severity of this lethal outbreak that nobody knows the cause of. Terrifying. And I also love the detail from the hospital perspective of contacting the CDC, and even they don't know what's going on. And once they kind of start to get clue-ins and an answer to what's causing the outbreak, they contact Homeland Security. And when confronting them with this information and talking to them about the evidence that the oceanographers found, Homeland Security also downplays what's happening. At the end of the day, when they realize how out of control the situation's got, the government turns off the cell towers, they close the bridge in and out of Claridge, and they just dump chlorine in the water and pay off everybody that survived this horrible, horrible parasitic outbreak. And that's just so scary. Like, I don't know, the idea that the people that are supposed to help you and help you conduct your everyday life just kind of ignoring evidence pointing to a problem, and then when the problem starts to arise, downplaying it, and then when it goes full-blown out of control, they just get rid of it, cover it up, try not to let it get out, and just pay off whoever survived the event. And that's just so scary. Like, that's not right. And I really feel like that's a big part of the horror in this film, is that these people don't have answers. They don't have help of any kind. And when confronting the people that should be helping them, they're kind of like gaslighting them in a way and being like, no, everything's fine. We have the desalination or whatever the heck it is plant. And like, there's nothing to worry about. Like, we got this under control, when no, it is not under control. Overall, The Bay is a very well-rounded film. The story is amazing. The characters, although we don't get to know them well, they are very respectable and sympathetic. The horror is amazing. I really love the use of practical effects. The CGI isn't perfect, and there's a couple of moments in the movie that you can kind of feel the budget, whether it's footage that looks like someone ran around shaking a camera with like generic screams added, or sometimes the acting can feel a bit subpar, but I feel that almost adds to the realistic feel of it. This movie is super, super great. I'm very surprised that it did not do as well in theaters, because I feel like this film has a lot of good qualities as well as kind of like a timeless message to it. Considering that most of the information pertaining to the Chesapeake Bay in this film is true because it is based on information that was supposed to be in a documentary about the Chesapeake Bay. That's really cool. It's hard to implement real world issues into films, especially horror films, without it coming across too blatant. Especially nowadays, I feel like messaging is very in your face, whereas this movie kind of uses the issue as the horror. That unknown people ignoring the issue that are supposed to be fixing the issue. And I really love this movie. I would definitely put it in my top 10. Everyone should watch this at least once. So I hope you guys go check out The Bay, and I will catch you guys in the next one.